And we are live. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to A Bookish Moment. I'm Sarah Burr.
And I am J.C. Kenney. Happy Baby Friday afternoon, folks. It's basically the weekend, and we've got a friend of the show back to bring us up to speed on what she's doing. So, Sarah, I think it's time to get bookish.
Yes. And as JC said, we have a dear friend of the show. Susan Van Kirk is here chatting with us today. The last time Susan joined us, she was talking about her art center mysteries. But today we're going to be diving into the town of Endurance and all of its many, many secrets, going back in time, finding cold cases, intrigue within the town and all of these wonderful scandals that we get to talk about. It's a 6-book series currently, so there's lots for folks to explore. So, Susan, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming back with us.
Thanks so much. I'm so happy to be able to talk with you again.
Same here. And for folks who may have missed your previous appearance on the show, can you give us just a little bit about your background prior to maybe discovering your love of writing and what kind of brought you into the world of writing mysteries?
Oh, well, that's a long story, so I'd probably better try to shorten it really fast. Uh, I wrote a memoir about my teaching life when I was teaching in high school. And that's my next project is to go back. It's 16 years ago. I'm going to go back and revise that book and put it out in a new edition. But after I did that, I thought once I retire, I would really like to write. And the things I love to read are mysteries. So I think I'll learn how to write mysteries. And that's what I did. Retired and thought, now I have time.
That is a
Well, there
very
you go,
concise,
folks.
a
Yeah,
very
yeah.
concise way of which is good because in mystery you need to be concise. It's often we think that readers are clamoring for that waxing poetic language. And often, at least I get the feedback of like, Sarah, like, let's keep it on track. Go, to the next scene. Let's figure out who done it. No dilly dallying here. So that is
Wow.
the way to go. What inspired your main character in the Endurance series, Grace Kimball? She is also a retired teacher. Why did you decide to root your mystery, number one, in an amateur sleuth, and maybe number two, as a profession that you were so closely tied to?
Well, I would say that I did that because, first of all, you know the old adage about writing what you know about,
Mm-hmm.
and certainly I knew about teaching. But I thought I would start with a woman that's a teacher that's just retired and trying to figure out, so what's she going to do next? And into her life comes a mystery. It's someone that she used to teach with is killed in an arson fire. And that happened to a friend of mine in college. A
Oh,
Oh,
year
wow.
after I left college, she was in a terrible fire at the college in a house off campus and she passed away.
oh my goodness.
So I decided that Grace would have that in her background. It's something that scared her a lot. And whenever she gets nervous or upset or worried about something, she starts having dreams about being caught in a fire like that. So that's kind of the way I began creating her was with that thought that, somehow she's got to go on with her life and stop having that happen all the time. So then she gets involved in this mystery because her friend is killed in a fire, and the detective in town, T.J. Sweeney, was a student of hers, and now they're very close friends. And so she kind of gets involved in that because the new editor in town, Jeff Maitland, asks her to write uh, an article for the paper about the town's centennial that's coming up. And the person that was killed in the arson fire, that's what she was doing. So that's kind of the way I started this off with
Mm.
Grace. Retired teacher, but very curious, and definitely ends up getting into situations that are scary.
Mm.
Well, speaking of scary, you've written 6 books so far in this series. You've also written a novella. And one of the things so that's a lot of stuff there. So you've got quite the universe going on there. Before the show, we even talked about how we got the Van Kirk canon going on here. Um,
Yeah.
and but it's a real thing. So I guess kind of what I'd like to know, or if you wouldn't mind sharing a little bit over the course of, let's just stick with the six novels, and we'll get to the novella a little bit later in the show. Can you talk a little bit about Grace's growth and kind of what has, kind of spurred her to continue to jump in when these murders happen? I mean, if I was real life,
Sure.
it's like, okay, yeah, I'm calling the police and running away.
Oh, that's a good question. Well, as I said in the first book, she has this thing in her past life that she's trying to get over, and that that happens in the first book. She ends up finding a way to deal with that and go on with her life. Um, let's see. She gets involved with the newspaper, which is what begins to make her realize that there is a life beyond teaching in high school, and that certainly this is something she could do and have a great time with. But then these things keep happening, like in the second book, Mary in Haste, one of her former students, is charged with murdering her husband. And
Eek.
Grace just knows she didn't do this. And of course, TJ Sweeney, the detective, says, I am so tired of hearing you say, Grace, my student could never have done that. And so she gets involved in trying to save her student in that one. It also has a second story in it that's from 100 years earlier.
Mm.
And it has a double plot. So, excuse me, the third book, she goes back to her old school. And that's where she begins to realize that life is gone now. It was wonderful while she taught, but now she's got to kind of realize that that's over. And she goes back to her old school because the principal is murdered. And TJ Sweeney asks her to go in and kind of stand in for another teacher and find out what's going on because she knows the people at the school. And of
Mm.
course, she's sure that none of them could be a killer because Grace is pretty naive about people. She really is. Let's see, in the fourth book, The Witch's Child, again, another one of her students comes back to town to bury her mom, who's died in prison. And, excuse me, the judge that was part of that backstory is murdered, and everyone suspects Grace's former student. So, again, that kind of pulls her into that situation. Fabric of Lies, the newest book, is about friends of Grace's that lived next door to her, and they disappeared back in 1981, the husband and wife. And now their son, who was 2 at the time, comes back to town wanting to find out what happened to his parents. And Grace was a very good friend of this couple that disappeared. So that pulls her into that situation. So, for a retired teacher, she sure gets around.
She does,
I
but
tell
it's
you what, JB Fletcher has nothing on your gal Grace, that's for sure.
but
Yeah,
it's also
she's always
very
getting into trouble.
it's something though that I think is very believable in the world that you have created, Susan, because teachers touch like so many lives, and
Mhm.
they have ev- in a community, especially in a small community, everyone has to go to school up to a certain point. And so the amount of people that Grace would actually have in her circle, or at least have knowledge of, or some type of opinion on, it's a really big pool of people. And so I think that gives lends very well to the amateur sleuth part of this, because often as writers we struggle to figure out, like, okay, how can we make our audience believe that we would get involved in this mystery. And I think on Grace's part that, if she has this deep conviction that my student didn't do this, teachers are fixers. They're people that want to, make the world a better place and give guidance and lead and do all these things. So I just think it really comes very nicely together in the way that Grace has become ingrained in the community. And I want to talk a little bit more about Endurance itself, because it is this place that has drawn a lot of different people to it. But before we do, I want to say hello to our wonderful folks that are joining us in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for being here today. If you have questions for Susan, please make sure that you're logged into your Google account or your YouTube account, and you should be able to pop them right into the chat. We have Susan saying hello all and also saying happy birthday, Sarah. Thank you, Susan. I appreciate it. And we have Farmhouse Reader saying welcome back, Susan, and hello to everyone. So we have DHB chiming in with a happy Thursday. So with that community spirit in mind, Susan, tell us a little bit about Endurance, the setting, and kind of what makes it this place that is. How did Endurance form in your mind?
Well, I grew up in the Midwest. I've never really left. I grew up in a town that's only 12 miles from where I am now. They have a huge history. I mean, Knox College is the only place left that has a site of the Lincoln-Douglas debates. And that's the college that I went to in Galesburg, my hometown. There's a lot of history here. It's connected to the Underground Railroad, too. And then I moved here to Monmouth, which is a much smaller town, about 9,000 people. And so there are bits and pieces of both of these towns in my stories. Some of the places, some of the names, they're all there. People in the region that read my books wonder sometimes, okay, so where is that that particular building she's talking about? Well, it isn't always there, but I do use a lot of the area's history in my stories. I was a history major in college, and then I taught English for 44 years. So history is kind of in my background, and I definitely want to get it into my books. And my Endurance town is very much like the town that I live in. It's probably a little better off financially, but otherwise it's very much like the town and the area I live in. And you're right. I think I've probably taught close to 5,000 students over my teaching career. So there are a lot of people there to draw on, especially for characters.
And you mentioned the history aspect of it. And sorry, Jim, I just want to get back to this because, Susan, you had mentioned in Mary in Haste, you have this dual plot, this dual timeline where I believe I'm blanking on the profession of the man that the young woman was married to, but he is killed, and the Grace finds this young woman's diary from the 1890s, and from there she begins to see parallels between her modern day mystery and this historical mystery. What are the challenges that you have run into, or what are the things that you find joy in weaving in these cold cases or these cases that have taken place in the past yet are still rooted in your present story?
Well, first of all, of course, I love to do the research. I mean, I'm definitely a history person. And much of this series also is located in a huge old Victorian house from the late 1800s. And I lived in this house when I first moved here to Monmouth. So it's a site of quite a few things that happen in this. Jeff Maitland buys the house and renovates it, turns it into a bed and breakfast. And that's where we are right now in the series. But looking up and researching even something like this house, I mean, I went up to the county courthouse to find out who had lived and owned this house. And the poor girl that I talked to, she had to go up to the attic and find this huge old plat book. She brings it down, puts it on the counter, and the dust just flies everywhere, which became a scene in my book, of course. But even all of the paperwork for this house, you know, it has all the old writing, the old beautiful writing by pen. And it's just amazing for me to look at things like that and think about how I can work them into my stories.
Mhm.
And so Judge Lockwood, who was the person that built the house in my Endurance series, he wasn't a very nice person. And the woman that writes the diary was his wife. And he died in kind of a mysterious way, which, as you said, has a lot of parallels with what goes on in the present, where the murder victim is a banker. And weaving those two together was a lot of fun. I almost had to take pages and spread them out across my house to figure out where to put this part of this plot in and this part of this plot in and make them fit together, you know.
Mhm.
So that was a lot of fun. It was a big challenge, but it allowed me to get a lot of that interesting history of the town into that story.
That is so cool. Just because you give us a history lesson,
Sure.
from 120, 30 years ago.
Right.
Can you talk about with Fabric of Lies, we have a 30-year-old cold case versus something that's over 100 years. Could you maybe
Right.
talk about the difference? What were there different challenges in writing about something kind of closer to present time? I mean, the 80s are still a while ago, but it's not 1891.
No, no, that's true. I was obviously an adult and alive in the 80s. I was actually a pretty young mother at that point. But that research involved more of looking at things that I knew about, but I had forgot exactly when those things happened. And when I looked at the early 80s, I was looking at what was going on in the United States at that time. Like there was let me think how to say this, the prisoners over in, was it Iraq? That they,
Oh, the
from the
the Iran
American
hostages. Yeah.
embassy. Right.
Hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That was going on. I mean, there
Yeah.
were a lot of things going on. I had to find out about children's toys because there are children in this story at that time. And that was a lot of fun. You know, the commercials on TV, all those kinds of things that you lived through. But, you know, when exactly did that happen?
Yeah.
Ronald Reagan was president.
Hmm.
And so it was a lot of looking back at that, looking at the furniture, you know, in the houses and being able to describe those kind of things and the things that people were wearing. But there are only a couple of chapters in that book from 1981, because that's another problem. If you're going to go back in time, you got to be careful. You have to be careful not to interrupt the main flow of the plot of the book. So you have to have a specific reason to go back to 1981. And those chapters have to have a reason that pushes the plot forward.
Mm.
So you have to think about all of those things. And that's why it's such a challenge. And I like to do that because it really pushes my brain.
That would
Just
break my brain. But I'm curious because JC I forget which Allie Cobb book it was, but Allie does investigate a cold case in Rushing Creek. Did you encounter, like, what were the challenges that you encountered with that type of plot? Because I feel like I would just get so confused. I would confuse myself. And which is why I haven't done one. So I'm always very curious, like, how do you do it?
Well, so for mine, and that was in book four and of the series. And so what I wanted to do with that one was take advantage of the fact that my wife is a genetic counselor and that there has been over the past five, probably 10 years now, so many advancements in forensic genealogy
Hmm.
and finding the cold cases and solving them through the use of genetic testing and sites like 23andMe, even though it's not around anymore, but you get the idea. So I thought that would be a fun task to take on. And so for me, the big challenge was I didn't go as far into detail as Susan did in like going into the past as much as, I needed to refresh myself going back 20 years, what were kind of the social mores of the time? How were, and especially because the murder victim is a young woman who was 19 at the time that she was murdered, how were women treated back then? While it's not while it's not that long ago, it's far ways before, the Me Too movement came to the fore. So it was really the challenge of, to Susan's point, thinking about, okay, what kind of cars people drove, how did they dress, what was the popular music, all that stuff. But also then, kind of that overarching, how did people in the Midwest, small town life, how would they react to a girl from the wrong side of the tracks disappearing? And it's kind of heartbreaking to think of, I'd like to think as many troubles as we have right now, that we as a society are still moving forward with the way in general we treat each other. And so that was kind of what I wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Nice.
Can I kind of connect something to that?
Of course.
You mentioned that I wrote a novella. Well, when I wrote this novella, it's much more of a procedural because it's about my detective and a cold case that goes back to the late 1930s. So she has a body that they discover in the present day. But back in the 1930s, they didn't have databases. They didn't have DNA. I mean, they had fingerprints, but this person they can't find fingerprints for this person or anything besides that. At this point, she's just a skeleton. There are no fingerprints. So T.J. Sweeney's got a body. She knows approximately when that body got buried there, but she has no way to figure out who this was. And she knows they were murdered because the skull is bashed in. But how is she going to figure out who this murder victim was? And she ends up in a very slick way using mitochondrial DNA.
Okay.
Now, I can't tell you how she does it because that'll ruin the story, but that was kind of my connection with getting into DNA research and figuring out what that was all about and how it might be used in this case.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's so cool.
I tell you, well, Sarah, I mean, you're such a big true crime fan. I mean, surely there
yes.
some of the podcasts that they brought up, the use of mitochondrial DNA,
Yes.
genealogy, forensic genealogy.
I think once it is available or more financially accessible to police departments across the U.S., like there are going to be so many cases solved because at this point in time, so many people have uploaded their DNA into these public databases that there was one case where they found, I think it was like a sixth cousin, like, how many ever times removed. And they were able to then, using location and like records of the area where this missing person was found, they were able to figure out like number one, who the victim was, but then in the cases where they're finding who the offenders are because of the DNA that they've left. And, these are cold cases that were like 30, 40 years ago at this point, before DNA was widely used or even known about. So yeah, I think it's once it's accessible to to police departments, that a lot of cases are going to be solved and justice will finally come for these folks. Which is exciting. And yeah. I love listening to it. I love learning about it. And I love what they're doing with, they're able to like create renderings of people based on their DNA. So they could be like, hey, like this is what our suspect might look like. Because they can figure out like your eye color and your hair color and your skin color and everything from the DNA. So it's an exciting time in true crime. But Susan, you mentioned your novella. This is The Locket, and this is told. It's from the case files of T.J. Sweeney. I want to talk really quickly about the novella because I've written a few myself, and sometimes when I bring up the novella to people, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to read. I only read novels because I don't get the full story in the novella." And it's like, but you do get the full story. It's just a much more maybe fast-paced version of events. And so I'm curious, like, what did you find different about writing a novella versus your other endurance mysteries? Was there anything that you're like, oh, I don't have the I don't have the space for it, or was it something that it just naturally the story took place within this amount of words?
Well, it ended up coming out perfectly. I mean, the novella that I wrote, the casebook of taste, I'm sorry, the locket from the casebook of T.J. Sweeney, it is about 82 pages.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason that it came out almost perfectly is because you have to take a plot, you have a main plot, you can't have subplots.
Mm-hmm.
There isn't room for those in a novella. So it's one straight shot with a main plot, and you don't have as many characters, but you do have your main characters that you concentrate on, and obviously you can't add a whole lot of other characters. It's got to be pretty straightforward.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I found to be the most different. Because when I wrote my novella, I had never written one before. And as I researched how to do that, that was what they were saying was it's got to be just a straight plot, straight through. And so that's what I did. And it really worked out very perfectly. But it is an entire story. It's a murder case. And I love the fact that it goes back to the 1940s and the big band music. My parents were around then. They went up to this rooftop venue in our town and danced to the big bands. And that's where this young woman is before she's murdered. But it is just so romantic because one of the people that I talked to in my hometown had actually been to that rooftop venue and danced as a teenager. And she could tell me all about it.
Mm-hmm.
And the local library had archives of people that had talked about their experiences doing that. So it was so cool to be able to go back and read about that period of time, but then to fit it into a very straightforward plot that obviously had quite a bit of history to it.
Mm-hmm.
That is so cool.
And do
I
you think that
really
you'll be
love that story? Yeah.
do you think that there will be more from TJ's casebook that we will get to enjoy?
I am right now starting to think about doing one or two more novellas that are cases of hers, because as Grace and Jeff are now married, TJ's a little more in the background in my series. So she has a fascinating life and she's a fascinating character. And I'm thinking about writing two more novellas and then putting all three together into one book. Because right now my novella about TJ Sweeney is only in an ebook. And people actually that want to read it don't always read ebooks. So they've been asking me to get it published into a book, but it's got to be a little longer to do a book. So that's what I'm thinking about.
Excellent.
Hey, you got to give the people what they want. So we will look forward to we'll look forward to that because TJ's really, really cool.
She is. She's a great character, and I really haven't plumbed her enough. We'll see.
Well, it sounds like we've got some more wonderful stories from Endurance to look forward to. Susan, if folks want to stay connected with you, where is the best place for them to either follow you online, sign up for your newsletter, read your blog, all that good stuff?
I actually have a website online. It's my name. All you have to do is type in my name, susanvankirk.com. It has all of my books. It has a newsletter sign up. I'm also on Facebook, but a little harder to find. On Facebook, my name is Sue Van Kirk space author. And I'm also on Instagram as S.I. Van Kirk. So they can find me in all of those places.
Perfect. And you also blog with the Writers Who Kill, if I'm not mistaken.
I'm sorry, say that again.
You also blog with the Writers Who Kill.
Yes, I write once a month with Writers Who Kill. You're right
Excellent.
about that. And you would know about that.
I certainly would. So, Susan, as we wind down our moment together, I'm hoping that you wouldn't mind sharing with our audience members. And I just want to give a quick shout out, Regina. I see that you popped in. Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. Any recommendations that you have in books, movies, TV shows, podcasts, audiobooks, the works? Anything that folks can add to their to be consumed list?
Good point. Well, I've been watching this new Harlan Coben TV show, which you would like. It's cold cases, and it's
Ooh.
called The Final Twist on Wednesday nights. So that's been
Ooh,
kind of
okay.
interesting because he goes into a lot of the procedural things that happen.
Mm-hmm.
I just finished a book by Annette Dashafee, and she has a couple of series, and this is her newest Honeywell book. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
really enjoying that. Gosh, the thing is, I've actually been listening to some of the old books by Mary Higgins Clark,
Oh,
Oh,
and that's
cool.
really intriguing because they do a lot more description back then, but she was so good
I
at
love Mary Higgins
hiding
Clark.
clues. Oh my gosh. So I'm learning a lot from her hiding of clues, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm really kind of enjoying listening to those.
My favorite was Loves Music, Loves to Dance. That one like haunted
Yes,
me
I just
for,
listened to that.
oh, I
Yeah.
love that one so much. I think I read it when I was 12 years old and I have thought about it ever since.
Aw.
JC,
So
Well,
what
anything
do you
new
that's
got?
to add?
So the only thing that I've been deep in the writing cave. I've got a looming deadline. But I
oh
do want to
no.
send a shout out to. I found a half-hour show on Amazon Prime called Secret Agent, also
Ooh.
known as Danger Man. It is from the 1960s. It's basically about a this secret agent working for kind of a version of like CIA or MI6. It's only a half hour, black and white. If you're familiar with the classic Peter Gunn TV show, this is if like Peter Gunn was a secret agent man. And
Ooh.
actually, the Johnny Rivers tune "Secret Agent Man" comes from the fact that in seasons 2 and 3, that song was the theme song for this show. So that's
Oh.
kind of a little thing too. So it's fun. It's only a half hour long, and it's just little fun, quick spy adventures.
That sounds very delightful.
Uh,
Yeah, yeah. What do
Um,
you got, Sarah?
we finally got caught up on Ghosts on our Paramount subscription, but we started watching the Ghosts UK version now, just to kind of compare contrast.
Oh, Ghost UK is way, way, way better.
It is okay.
Yes.
I'm interested because I really love Ghosts, so it's weird to see the differences and the similarities and being like, I wonder why they chose to like make this person different in the US show and all of that stuff. So we're excited to see where it takes us, at least until our subscription runs out, because then we'll need to find something else to watch. So that'll be but we're enjoying it. It's fun. And I really wish I could see Ghosts because it would just be a hoot, I think. Um, and then I never get any work done. But I digress. Susan, it was absolutely wonderful to have you here today. Thank you for stopping
Yes.
by and sharing
Thank you.
sharing endurance with us and letting us a peek behind the curtain of what it's like to be in Grace's world. I'm very excited for more stories from TJ to come. To our viewers who joined us, thank you so much for being here. Next week, we have some very interesting shows coming your way on Tuesday, and this is new programming. Tuesday, we're having a bookish hour at 7 p.m.
Yeah.
Eastern. We are having a release celebration for our wonderful J.C. Kenney. We're going to be joined by Nan Reinhart to party in the celebrations. We're going to be talking about Buried in the Sand, what it's like editing JC's work, how Nan manages to corral the chaos. No, your work is perfect. We love it, Jim. And then on Thursday, 2
Oh, and
p.m.
don't
Eastern.
forget. But don't forget, the part of the reason that Nan's going to be there is because Nan has a brand new romance
She
album
does,
that came
yes.
out today.
So we
So dual
have
release.
it's a dual release party, lots of fun, lots of celebrating. And then on Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern. So this is going to be much earlier than you guys are used to. But the reason why we're doing it at 2 p.m. Eastern is because our guest is joining us all the way from across the pond. And our guest is Felix Francis, who happens to be the son of the legendary Dick Francis. And he is joining us to talk about, the work that he has done writing with his father, as well as his new book out called Dark Horse, which is a Dick Francis novel. So it's going to be very, very cool. We're very excited. But just make sure you mark your calendars for that earlier time. Maybe you can take a late lunch and come join us. So again, thank you everyone for being here. Regina, I hope that you can make it on Tuesday so that you can ask JC all of your questions that you have. We thank you for your support. We're trying to hit 1,000 subscribers this year. If you could like and subscribe to our channel, we'd very much appreciate it. But we look forward to seeing you next week, folks. And until then, stay bookish. Have a good one, everybody. Bye.
Bye.